In this video, we will do a brief review of the characteristics of tissues found in the body. First, let's take a step back and review the different levels of organization within the human body. So the smallest functional unit of life is called the cell. And then cells who have a similar specialized function will aggregate into a tissue. For example, let's say this cell is a cardiomyocyte. A bunch of cardiomyocytes will get together and form myocardial tissue, or that tissue of the heart. This tissue then will come together with other types of tissue to make an organ, and this is something that has a specific vital function, much like the heart is a pretty vital organ. And then organs will come together with other organs to create an organ system. For example, the heart is part of the larger cardiovascular system. And then all of our systems come together to make the organism, which is us. And so in this video, we are going to focus on tissues. So a tissue is a group of cells that are found together in the body. We have around 200 different types of cells in the body, and they create 4 basic categories of tissue. We have nervous tissue, which includes the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. We have epithelial tissue, which lines all the surfaces of the body. This includes the GI tract and the skin surface. We have muscle tissue, so that includes cardiac, smooth, and skeletal muscle. And then we have connective tissue, which is a broad category that includes fat and other types of padding tissue, bone, and tendons. So cell differentiation is what we call the formation of the different types of cell. So during embryogenesis, alterations in gene expression will drive the formation of different cell types, and that is called cell differentiation. Once a cell has differentiated, it will maintain that throughout the life of that cell because it remembers what kind of cell it is. Stem cells are partially differentiated cells that we have for regeneration of some of our tissues throughout life. An example is our bone marrow is full of hematopoietic stem cells that then can become our red blood cells, our white blood cells, our platelets. So let's do a quick review of the different types of tissue. So epithelial tissues are basically large sheets of cells that cover all the surfaces of our body that are exposed to the outside world, like our skin, and our GI tract from mouth to anus is also all considered external. It also forms much of the glandular tissue of the body. And so epithelial tissue is our skin and mucous membranes, our GI tract. It also forms the lining of our blood vessels, which are endothelial cells, a specific type of epithelial cell. And then our respiratory and urinary tracts also covered with epithelial tissue. It has 3 surfaces, so there's an apical surface. This is the exposed surface of the cell. So if you're talking about a skin cell, this is what would project outside, or if this is a GI cell, this is the inside of the GI tract. The lateral surface are the sides of the cell, and then the basal surface is attached to the basement membrane that connects that cell to the organ. Epithelial tissue itself has no blood supply. There's connective tissue underneath the epithelial cells, and this is where the blood supply can then provide nutrients through this connective tissue and draw waste out. Epithelial cells are joined by cell-to-cell adhesion molecules, so they often have a pretty tight connection. For example, our skin is connected very tightly so that it can be waterproof. There are different types of epithelial cells, and so we're just going to look at them generally based on the shape and the layers. So for layers, you can have a simple layer, which is 1 cell thick. You can have a stratified layer where there are multiple levels, and pseudostratified, where you have these columnar ciliated cells that appear to be stratified but aren't multiple layers. There's also different shapes. So you have squamous, which are flat, cuboidal, which are square, and columnar, which are more rectangular-ish. And then we have some specialized type of epithelial cells in our glands because these are specialized to secrete substances. When our gland secretes substances, we have two types of secretions. So an exocrine gland or an exocrine secretion is something that is excreted outside of the body. So examples of that would be sweat or milk. Endocrine glands secrete stuff inside our body, so those go into our bloodstream, and so an example of that would be our hormones. Connective tissues are found all around the body, and so they're often specialized for different functions. So regular, what you think of as a good old-fashioned connective tissue would be things like our adipose tissue, our areolar tissue. There's also reticular tissue. And then we have some very specialized tissue like cartilage, bone, and blood. Muscle tissue is unique in that it contracts due to filaments. We have actin, which are very thin filaments, and myosin, which are thick filaments, and they allow contraction and movement through this muscle tissue. There's three types of muscle tissue. So skeletal muscle is what we use for movement, like in our legs and arms. Smooth muscle is things like our GI tract, and cardiac muscle is the muscle cells of the heart. Smooth muscle cell can divide, whereas skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle are permanently differentiated. They can no longer divide to replace injured cells. Nervous tissue is divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Again, nervous tissue is highly differentiated, and these cells also do not regenerate. Now, our tissue, we talked about the different types of cells, but around the cells is a space called the extracellular matrix. Now, what is the extracellular matrix? So this is the structural part of the tissue. So something has got to hold the cells together, and it's this extracellular matrix. We have two types. We have the basement membrane. So this will surround our epithelial cells, our endothelial cells, and our smooth muscle cells to give them something to hold on to. An example would be in the kidneys. We have a basement membrane that hold together those cells in the glomerulus. And then we also have interstitial extracellular matrix, and this fills in all the space between the cells, the intracellular space. So the primary components of the extracellular matrix include the fibroblast. So these are important because they synthesize collagen, elastin, and other fibers that are key to the extracellular matrix. We also have integrin proteins in the cell membrane. These bind components of the extracellular membrane to initiate signaling cascades that promotes proliferation or the division of cells to make more cells, and differentiation or the specialization of cells. There is also water hydrated gels like hyaluronic acid that provide fluid in that interstitial space. You might have heard of hyaluronic acid. It's a popular beauty product that helps hydrate the skin. And we have things like fibronectin, which is an adhesive glycoprotein that can hold on to parts of that extracellular membrane. And then what does the extracellular matrix do? Why do we need it? Well, it provides structure for our tissue. And so when we have soft tissue, it provides turgor and allows for tissue movement. And for bone tissue, it provides that rigidity. It also regulates growth, movement, and differentiation of cells that surround that extracellular matrix. And when there's injury, the extracellular matrix provides a scaffolding for tissue removal. And so it's vital for repair after an injury. And this is our quick review of tissues in the body.